MonsterVerse Ghidorah terrorized moviegoers in only one film of Hollywood's Godzilla series before his reign of terror ended, and while his three-headed shadow looms large over the franchise, would he have had more success in another era? Well, today we test that very idea as I ask, what if Legendary's King Ghidorah was in Godzilla's Showa era? Now, you're probably asking where would we place him, and the answer is I think the best thing to do is we take Showa Ghidorah, toss him aside, and place MonsterVerse Ghidorah squarely in the leading role of Ghidorah in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Just like in the original film, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, he crashes upon the Earth in an asteroid, growing in size until a fearsome hydra emerges with global ambitions. So before we get to any hypothetical battles, I do want to set the stage of this what if. Godzilla and Rodan would still have their drag-out brawl, with neither coming out the victor as they rage across Japan's countryside. The Venus plotline could still occur, with Ghidorah just bypassing Earth and raising the planet eons ago. To combat Ghidorah, the single Mothra larva would still attempt to persuade Godzilla and Rodan, but unlike the film, I think it would actually be successful this time. Why? Well, Ghidorah, with sensing no alpha, would attempt an alpha call to establish dominance over the planet. Showa Godzilla, still relatively early in his career, really hasn't taken that spot or that leader role yet. While some distant monsters may immediately follow, Godzilla and Rodan certainly would not. They'd probably take the call as an insult, and with the malevolent storm surrounding them, take Ghidorah's power as a challenge, leading the trio to battle Ghidorah together from the start, albeit begrudgingly. Final note is that I will scale Ghidorah down so he's roughly the same size as Showa Ghidorah. Look, I'm here for creative and entertaining stories, not irrefutable feat debates. So, with that caveat said, let me tell you how this battle would always go down with absolutely no flaws in logic whatsoever. Godzilla and Rodan immediately move in for melee. Claw and beak and tooth clash against Golden Scale. Speaking of the latter, this Rodan wouldn't go down nearly as easily as his legendary counterpart. A straight gravity bolt would hurt, but then again, allowing Godzilla to take the win would hurt Rodan's ego more after a battle spanning days. So long as Godzilla stays in the fight, Rodan will be by the lizard's side. Throw in some Mothra webbing that should hold up even with a storm raging around them, and the trio do have a shot at winning here. Note I said winning, not killing Ghidorah. Taking a supercharged atomic blast with little care makes me think Showa's atomic ray will be a distraction at best. Also, when you factor in Ghidorah's regeneration, though limited without a power source to snack on, this is not a battle that the trio can easily win with melee alone. If they rip off a head, Ghidorah can still easily fight, leading to the only two outcomes I can see. The more likely option, for me at least, is MonsterVerse Ghidorah, having just emerged from the meteor and relatively low on power, is taken aback by the trio. The bioelectric bolts do immense damage, especially to Godzilla, who is still possibly weak to electricity at this point. MonsterVerse Ghidorah also clearly demonstrates he is the strongest of the group, but after consistent tenacious blows and Mothra webbing his heads, he decides to tactically retreat like he did in Antarctica. The less likely option is he stays and wins. Vaporizing Mothra would really hammer away the trio's chances of Ghidorah pulling a retreat, and if Godzilla can't stand up to the electrified blast that would be worse than anything Kong dished out, I can see him getting drained. Then, with Rodan as the last one remaining, if the Hydra is feeling merciful, the radiated Pteranodon may just bow like his MonsterVerse counterpart. Victory, Ghidorah. Again, this is the less likely option, but to explain things with what happens if Ghidorah retreats, I first want to stress a timeline where Ghidorah wins. A Category 6 storm quickly engulfs Japan, but the dragon's interest really isn't on destroying the nation. Instead, Ghidorah begins to traverse the world. In the film, even with Godzilla chasing him, Ghidorah really didn't care about beating Godzilla. He clearly had his own goals, like absorbing power or establishing dominance over any titans he came across. That really only changed when something antagonized him, like the Alpha Call in Boston, so I see Ghidorah dragging his colossal storm across the Pacific, sensing monsters and forcing them to his cause. Anguirus, Baragon, Ebera all would submit immediately or submit after a brief battle, like what happened with MonsterVerse Rodan. There really is no single monster even close to Ghidorah's level to face him except for one, but Ghidorah wouldn't focus on him yet. He'd probably swing east, heading toward the vast nuclear reactors of the United States, or sensing the country as the biggest threat to him, like in King of the Monsters. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, the entire Pacific Fleet, along with every fighter the US could scrape up, would be thrown Ghidorah's way, all with middling results. With tens of thousands of American sailors and pilots dead, nuclear weapons would definitely be launched to protect the homeland. The B-41, the largest US nuclear weapon at the time, would deploy a 25 megaton bomb that, at best, may slow Ghidorah for a few minutes or seconds. While Ghidorah never was hit directly with a nuke, MonsterVerse Godzilla took a 15 megaton bomb and considered it dinner. Legendary Goji also took a modern nuclear weapon, and while we don't know the yield, I think all evidence and Ghidorah's insane regeneration when an ample energy source is nearby that he can naturally absorb point to the Stormbringer bringing the storm to the US. In perhaps days, at most weeks, the United States would go from a superpower to something resembling a European nation after World War II. Monsters under Ghidorah's command would level city after city before the Hydra makes his way to Europe, which would definitely end the world. Why? Well, I don't think the United States would deploy enough nukes to end the world. Now, I can't say the same thing about the Soviet Union, who would see the dragon approaching Eastern Europe, pull out every Tsar Bomba they have, and attempt to do two things with a whole bunch of nuclear stones. A, destroy Ghidorah, and B, destroy Ghidorah over Western capitalist nations. The amount of bombs, radiation, it's all too much. Even if Ghidorah is blown to pieces, he'll regenerate in a world irradiated beyond compare. Radioactive storms consume an Earth under nuclear winter, leaving a single monster to stand against Ghidorah, a monster located on the island of Mondo. As thunderclouds eventually swirl atop the Seoul Atoll, MonsterVerse Ghidorah lands to challenge the island's king, the last monster yet to yield to him on Earth. Yet to the three-headed dragon's surprise, he finds not a cowering creature like most, but a raging berserker that feeds on the very electrical power he summons. The island quakes from the battle, hours pass by with no side gaining an advantage until, to the dragon's fury, he is forced to retreat off Mondo. King Kong takes the first round. Now I can see you all asking how Kong would win. Well, the Showa version actually is the perfect counter to MonsterVerse Ghidorah. The storm Ghidorah summons, thanks to the constant lightning, will bestow Kong greater and greater amounts of strength. The same could be said for Ghidorah's bioelectric gravity bolts, which would be nigh ineffective. And then when it comes to melee, sure, MonsterVerse Ghidorah would be stronger at first and have the agility bonus, but as Kong absorbs more and more electricity, his body radiates that very power. We don't know how Ghidorah would like his own power being used against him, but assuming there is even a meager effect, Ghidorah wouldn't be able to effectively grapple or drop him from a great height like he did with MonsterVerse Godzilla due to Kong's energized touch. Only by bringing the monstrous army he's managed to attain would Ghidorah be able to overcome the final resistance to Earth's complete conquest. Now that the Earth is his, Ghidorah may have some trouble with alien invaders, but I can only stress that it would be at most a nuisance to him. The Exilians might be able to control Ghidorah, though that is a big if. I can't see the Hydra letting anything get by him without blowing it out of the sky first. Ghidorah would be electrified. The Nebulans, even with Gigan and a hypothetical Showa Ghidorah, just can't match Ghidorah and his army at this point. The only two that have a shot are the Black Hole aliens with Mechagodzilla or potentially a Mecha King Ghidorah, and the Keylocks turning the Hydra's army against him. To the former, who would descend roughly 10 years after humanity has fallen, the Black Hole aliens just don't have much more than a radioactive husk of a world to work with. It'll be hard for the Black Hole aliens to gain a foothold, and if they can't, they may just be dissuaded from attempting such a takeover in the first place. As for the Keylocks, they needed to knock out the monsters first to then place their mind-controlled technology on them. Ghidorah doesn't need oxygen, or really an atmosphere, so their gases will prove impossible to use against him, especially if the Earth is engulfed in a superstorm at this point. Also, as a reminder, Keylocks invaded in 1999, which would be 35 years after Ghidorah arrived, and even in a best-case scenario, if they turn Ghidorah's army against him, the one who is many could wipe them all out relatively easily. So yeah, if Ghidorah wins from the start, the Earth is basically his for the taking. So tune in next time if you want to see how this what if would have gone if, instead of in that first battle him winning, he would have actually been forced to retreat. But if you've enjoyed this content, please remember to like and subscribe. I'm trying to grow What If Kaiju, and if you've enjoyed this type of content, doing those things definitely helps. But until part 2 eventually releases next month, I'm GrayShot151, and I'll catch you all next time. Until then, later.